Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler,
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
and you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Behind the Sign. We're joined with two guests again today. And Mary Hope, would you like to introduce our special guests?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have our agent, Keller Williams agent Dave Myer with us, and we have Andy from Boufford Insurance. So today, we really wanted to talk about another step in the buyer process so that people really start feeling comfortable about what goes on. And I think there's so many things that we've kind of unearthed behind the sign on this podcast of how many steps and what is involved. And so we love you guys to kind of pull that apart of what we should be aware of with insurance and how this is involved in the process, Dave, about this. But we'd love to know about you guys, first of all. So, Andy, can you tell us a little bit about you, how you got into the insurance industry? You know, most people don't say, I want to be an insurance agent when I grow up. So maybe you did. So we'd love to hear your story.
Exactly. I went to high school at a technical high school in Wynn, Massachusetts, and I was into computer programming. And for your senior year, they offered you to co-op with a company, any company that was within the program. I picked an insurance company to interview at, and they hired me. So, and I loved it, and that's how I ended up in the insurance business.
That's so interesting. Was that not what Kathy with Monarch, was she not interning in high school?
She was interning at some place, and yep.
Same thing. That's very interesting. So what, you said you loved
So
it.
now 41 years later, it's still...
Oh, I thought it was just a couple years ago.
No, long time ago, 41 years in the business. I've worked all aspects of the business too, the company side, the agency side.
Yeah. So when you said that you just loved it, what was it that you loved?
Just the fact that I could help people get the insurance they needed at an affordable cost, pretty much.
Got it.
You know,
Got it.
It was a good feeling every day.
Yep.
You know,
And so how long have you been with Boufford Insurance?
I've been with Boufford. This is my 6th year. September 3rd will start my 7th year with them. And I can't believe that time has flown by that fast.
Yeah. And so your job particularly, are you mostly on insuring homes, or do you do other parts of insurance?
Well, where I'm based here, I tend to start with the home, but
Yeah.
yes, I can insure everything. I usually, if I write the home, I try to pull in the autos, their boats, an umbrella, whatever, their business, if they have their own business, I try to pull in everything. Or we try to pull in everything because we can insure
Yeah,
everything.
it's usually
We have the
better when you...
company capacity to do so, yeah. And it is better to package everything up, and it makes the client more secure that they have everything with one agency, and vice versa for the agency. You know, we've written everything we can for the client.
That's great. That's great. So Dave, tell us about you.
I on the other hand, did not choose real estate as a first career. I actually, in high school, I grew up in Westford, Massachusetts, was looking into getting into film production or multimedia stuff. But at that time, it was not a very lucrative option, or the jobs were
Still
silent.
is not.
We may can say that. I made a good choice.
Sure.
But somehow I ended up getting interested in law enforcement, and I was a police officer in New Hampshire for about 12 years. And somewhere along the way, you know, the job lost its appeal, and Michael Chapdelaine, one of my teammates, and I, we worked together at one point, but then we worked in neighboring towns, and he started asking, like, have you ever thought about getting your real estate license? And I was just like, I don't know how to do sales. It's like, if you're doing sales all the time, you're talking people down from fighting with you. You get them to thank you for writing them a ticket. You know, like, it's just redirecting those skills. So I ended up, I'm like, I'll do it part-time. And, you know, so I started, and then once I started closing a few deals, I'm like, I'm just going to jump. So
So how long ago was that you got your license?
that was in 2020. And the pandemic put a pause on my progress, because I came to the office and I'm like, this is great. Everyone's so happy. No one's moping around. Like, it's a very negative world in policing. But then COVID happened, all hands on deck on the police side of things. So it took a while to get started, but I'm in my 5th licensed year, 4th full-time year. And
So you you went in full time pretty soon after.
Yeah, I jumped out of the plane and built the parachute on the way down. I sold my house, pulled my pension, like that was my safety cushion, and made sure that I had something there in case I didn't make any sales, but that wasn't the case. So
That's a big deal.
Mhm.
That's a big deal. So you must have experienced something, even though there was a little pause and that stuff, that you knew it was worth it. What was it that you could see? Now, this I could make a career out of.
So actually, 'cause I correct people all the time. Initially, it was the freedom of schedule. We can make our own hours, and you're your own boss. And then when you actually get into it, you realize, yeah, I can do all that, but the more I take time off or do this, I'm not going to make any money. So so there is a schedule, and there are still nights, but it's not overnight. So, but the freedom is nice though, because when you do decide it's time for a vacation, I just make sure that there's someone covering things while I'm away and just go. So that you don't need approval, you don't need to run things up the chain of command. And the best part is it's a much happier work environment. Things are still stressful, which works for me because I'm good in those situations.
You've
But
been trained for stress.
exactly, but I don't have to fight with anyone, or if people are being very argumentative and it's not working out, you can just walk away. There's no need to make sure the call is closed. And
Yeah.
so it transitions very well.
That's great.
That's great. So, between the two of you, do you guys do a lot of business together when you're working on the buy side, Dave, with clients and sort of giving them the knowledge? Obviously, that other agents who have been on the show talk about the fact that they want to just sort of flood their clients with preparation for worst case scenarios, and I feel like a big part of that obviously is insurance, right? I mean, insurance is for worst case scenarios in general, right? So,
Literally, that's the definition.
and obviously from your background, sort of like outlining how thorough you are and sort of making sure that everything is kind of been checked off. Do you work with Andy a lot when you bring a new buyer on? You start looking at homes and start saying this is something that like we have to kind of calculate into our approach and our offer and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So when I'm working with buyers, I'll have that conversation, usually before we're submitting offers, but hey, do you have someone in mind for insurance afterwards? And usually you get like the Geicos and the Allstates, and I go, well, I'd give Andy a call, get a second opinion because you may be surprised on your coverage may be better, and I'll let Andy take that. But there may be some better options, and even better price for you. So that's good to know.
Yes.
Yes. Love it. Yes.
What he said.
So where does that come in? So let's just pretend we've never bought a home. When do you have them start looking for insurance, right? That's not when someone calls you and says, I want to go look at a house. Their first thing is not like, yay, I want to go shop insurance. So where does that come into place? Like just even where in the transaction and all of that?
So generally in the transaction, you need to get that insurance binder, fairly quickly once you go under contract. I do try to let them know that in advance, just, hey, just keep in mind if we make an offer and it's accepted, you're going to need to provide the lender with an insurance binder. So that's usually where the question of, do you have someone in mind right now? Do you need a recommendation? Or, maybe still just shop around while you're at it. You might be surprised. So it'll come up naturally that way, or if we're looking at properties that I know there may be insurance issues, and I'll let Andy take the details on this one, but I know that the age of roofs have really been a big problem recently. If they're near a flood zone and there might be flood insurance. So those are things, especially if I know that the buyer's budget is right towards their limit, and if it needs flood insurance and we have to factor in a few more $100 a month or whatever the price may be, they're not going to qualify for that home. So that's why it's important on the agent's job.
Well, that's what I was wondering. So we do usually have a due diligence period in contracts, and that's probably when most people reach out to you as soon as we're under contract.
Right. Usually as soon as the P&C agreement's signed, that would be the best time to start looking.
So what are what would you be looking at if someone said, hey, this is my address? What are the things that I need to be concerned about and things like that?
Obviously, the top of the list is the age of the roof. age
us
and
more.
condition of the roof.
Everything's under the roof, right? Yes.
Correct, because everything is under the roof is absolutely right. The age of the roof, companies provide rates based on the age of the roof. So from 1 to 20, whatever the age of your roof is you're going to get credited or you're going to get charged more. Obviously, on the 10 to 20 range, it's going to be a charge to your account. On the 9 and under, there's going to be a discount. So it's factored into the rate based on the liabilities concerning the age of the roof. What can happen in a windstorm to an older roof.
Got it.
Situations like that.
Okay, so I have totally a random question. So if someone has a 19-year-old roof,
Thought you could say 19-year-old kid for some reason.
no, we're not talking
On a
about
roof.
kids under that roof, and then so they get rate. They got a certain rate for insurance, and then we're going kind of down this rabbit hole. And they get a new roof down the road. Could they now look at their insurance and get this adjusted?
When they get a new roof
Yeah.
when anybody gets a new roof put on their house, they should be contacting their insurance company or agent and letting them know that because, like I said, that is a rating factor. And once the year of the roof is changed, usually to a new roof, usually in most cases, the insurance premiums are going to drop. In fact, that just happened with Mark. He questioned why his insurance was so high. And he also mentioned that he put a new roof on recently. So I looked at his policy and I said, still has the old date. So with that adjustment, I did save him some money. Yeah, it brought his rates down.
Got it. So what other things could be a liability for insurance when they're looking at a home, or things that could raise the rate or make it uninsurable?
Obviously, the next factor would be, of course, major liability hazards, or what the companies call hazards, would be a pool, a trampoline, breed of dog that you may own. Obviously, breeds like Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, German Shepherds. A lot of companies don't want to see the ownership of those particular dogs, and they'll flat out decline the business to begin with in those cases. I do have one company that does the opposite. They don't care what kind of dog breed. Yes, it is interesting. I'm sure.
Send all our dog
I'm
owners.
sure we tell you do have to tell them that you own a dog, and there is a rating factor, an increased rating factor in that. But they'll take on any dog as long as it hasn't been aggressive or caused a claim or bitten anybody in the past.
Interesting.
But there's only one in the market that I know of, and we have them. So
what about the flood zone? Because I feel like that's something that's becoming more and more of a thing.
Yes, I even offer Keller Williams an advanced service on flood zones. If you're about to put a listing on the books and you think it's in a flood zone, or you want to verify that it is or it isn't, all I need is the address via an email or stop by my office and I can tell you. And because flood doesn't take into any attributes of the insured, I can also give you a rate because the rate is based strictly on the property location and the flood zone.
That's a big deal. Yeah. So, Dave, how does flood zones and things like from a buyer's agent's perspective, like where's that coming in? Do people have hesitation? And there's a lot of water around here, so they're also wanting the water, right? Like a lot of buyers want the views, and then they're kind of stuck with this insurance.
Right.
Yeah, not all waterfronts are created equal. Some might come into your basement once in a while. It's right. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and everyone's tolerance is going to be different.
Yes.
I've worked with folks that the moment it had a high flood rating, they didn't even want to look at the property. Others are like, as long as they haven't actually had any water intrusion, maybe it's near a flood zone, they're okay with it. Or but on my side, if all I can do is, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. I'm just like, well, you're aware of this, so
Absolutely.
here are some things you can do to help mitigate that. You can get all your utilities in the basement raised up, depending on what their basement looks like. I've seen ceiling mounted furnaces before in a few flood prone properties. But it's just like, making sure they're fully informed before they decide to make an offer on the property, and also know, if it is actually in a flood zone, there's going to be an increased cost for that. And
Yeah.
I know we talk about it usually triggers in the due diligence window, but I'm very big on making sure this is going to be a sound purchase before we get to that point. Because if
Yes,
we know,
that's just a buffer after the fact, just to protect yourself.
because if our numbers are tight where it is already, and we have no wiggle room, and there might be flood insurance, we need to know that before we write the offer.
Absolutely.
And it's the same on the seller side. You want to make sure, hey, these are conditions people may have. Let's do the research up front and let them know. Because we don't want people that aren't qualified or can't afford the insurance to come in and start making offers. And we just want to make sure that doesn't fall apart in the underwriting phase.
Well, I love that idea of doing the research on the seller side, because I do feel that so many buyers, and you've probably experienced this, Dave, make their decisions kind of on an emotional reaction right now. And so if there's something that doesn't have a solution to it, they might walk away just because of a what if. But if you've taken care of that what if, I think that really helps selling a property, because it takes it off the table, or it's just part of the equation, because we do live in in New Hampshire. I mean, we have the ocean and Lake Winnipesaukee and a lot of lakes. Like, that's part of, and that's why people come here so many times, right? But I think that's that tolerance and that expectation. And there's a lot of different rates of flood insurance, right? Not it's
Correct.
If you're in a flood zone, you're just in a flood zone and this is the cost. That's not the way it is.
It depends on the severity of the flood zone.
Yep. And the distance away and
from water, yes.
From water.
Yep.
Does insurance ever get talked about, like, during the inspection phase, right? Like, you're going in and you're doing an inspection, excuse me, and, like, I don't know, say there's a crack in the fault line in the basement or something, right? Like structural. Does that come into play with insurance once things get highlighted like that? Like, is that like if you see a problem and you go say, oh, is that insurable, or is that repairable, or is that, something that the seller could cover, or is that something that they're going to expect our insurance to cover because could be 5 years from now, it could be 10 years from now that it actually is an issue? Is that something?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think Andy and I actually ran into this on one, because the there's a lot of misconceptions with inspections. Your bank and your insurance company do not see that report unless you give it to them. That is the buyer's report.
It's a good idea not to.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you don't want floating around, because then underwriters or insurance companies are going to start picking it apart. So, however, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but something that could happen is, if there's no comment about the age of the roof, if maybe it's not mentioned in the disclosures. And another thing I will warn folks on, hey, you've got a very old roof. We may be closing on this soon, and then one of the adjusters may come out after you close and then flag your roof. And I believe there was that liability exclusion, or maybe even a requirement to replace, depending on the policy. Is it
right? Correct. I at least have to have a guesstimate on the age of the roof. I can't quote without putting something in that field when the companies ask. So either it's the actual year or the best guess, or the inspector's best guess if you had the home pre-inspected. So
yeah,
that actually brought up a question, because I think it's a newer, I don't know, the last 10 years, that now insurance companies are having people come and inspect the home. What are they mostly looking for when they're doing
insurance companies, the first priority is the roof. If they know it's an older roof, over 15 years old, that's the first priority, and why they're sending the inspector out to take a look. But they're also looking for other hazards, like undisclosed dogs, that are on their prohibited lists. So if a person insured doesn't, or if the agent fails to ask, about dogs specifically, and the inspector takes a photo of a pit bull, chances are your policy is going to be issued a cancellation notice, because the pit bull's on every company's prohibited dog list, except for one. So,
question for you, Andy. So I've been told that we're in sort of what's called a hardened market right now as far as insurance goes. Is that still accurate? And is that really just because of a lot of the natural disasters that have been, plaguing different parts of the country?
Exactly. In fact, my upcoming speech on the 15th in front of KW addresses that. And I actually should have brought it with me.
You would have had a script.
Right. But yes, that is a factor. It's going to be a hard market from what we see through this year. Insurance companies companies going to take rate where they can, where the states allow them to. And I do see it softening up from what I've been reading in 26, because actually, even with the California fires last year, the P&C companies made a profit of $24 billion last year, even with those losses. So, I mean, certainly they all haven't been calculated. Some of them are going to roll in to this year, but it was the first time in 5 years that the industry as a whole made a profit. They lost money 4 straight years prior to that.
Wow.
And usually with 2 consecutive good years, the rates start to stabilize. The underwriting tightening up starts to loosen. So I do see that coming in 26, unless, of course, we have some other major disaster.
Right.
That's really interesting. This is the very reason. I think this is why we're bringing a lot of the professionals of all these industries. Us as agents can't know everything and be a professional. And I actually say that a lot with all of our partners in this company. As I walk people through this office, we don't need to be the professional, but we have to have people next to us that we trust that can give us that data. And I think that is such valuable information, especially for our people who may have had a hard time getting insurance in the last few years, that this might be loosening up, and that's something that we can put into our equation and have conversations with them about it. What do you think, Andy, is the biggest misnomer or the thing that maybe agents or buyers don't understand about the insurance, and if they could understand it, your life would be easier?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, totally. I like loaded questions.
Probably the fact that every home that is new to a company is going to be inspected by the insurance company. Most of the carriers we have inspect every home. One of the carriers we have sends you an app and you do the inspection yourself. They tell you what to take pictures of. And obviously, the insured could skew the inspection a little bit, taking their pictures at a different angle and stuff like that. And probably most people are smart enough to do that if they know the insurance company may not like this.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the inspection process.
So
Every
every
home's going to be
home.
inspected.
So if you're insuring it with a company that hasn't insured this home before,
Correct.
it's going to have an inspection.
Correct. Now, the people that might avoid inspection are newer homes, or if they're staying with the same company they're with currently.
Oh, that's interesting, because we do talk about that often, that if it's a harder home to insure, to try to go to that insurance company, right?
And that's usually one of the questions I'm asking whoever's listing the home is, is it insured now? And if it is, I'll tell the folks, hey, I would maybe even start with them just because they'll already have it insured.
Right.
And if they're not going to renew it, then you give Andy a call. But yeah, because if you know it's already working and you have some of these areas that might be a concern, well, all right, well, they have a policy. Well, we want to also just make sure that they have the right policy, because maybe they don't know about it either. So
Right.
On the local to national level, Andy, would you say, I mean, how is New Hampshire fared in the insurance, hardened market compared to other states? Because I know there was a big provider, right? Florida, or a couple who pulled out completely, right? And they were not going to operate in the state of Florida anymore. Has that happened in New Hampshire as well?
There's been a lot of companies that have pulled out of Florida. No, I can't recall any company that's pulled out of New Hampshire. I mean, typically New Hampshire, out of the New England states, New Hampshire generally has the best rates out of the 6 New England states that I've seen. Massachusetts, the highest.
Why?
Absolutely the highest, because of the condensity, the population, the less amount of land that each house has, as you get into the denser populations.
Oh, interesting.
How does that play a role? Is it just because there are more people, so if this house gets on fire, the next one can get on fire because of the proximity kind of thing?
Exactly.
Interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah, with New Hampshire, with our houses with 20 acres, what the homes are at risk.
Okay, wild card question, Andy. What's the strangest thing you've ever had to try to insure?
Strangest thing I've ever had to try to insure is someone asked if they could insure their home that had been burnt to the ground until they purchased another one. And obviously, there is no such coverage. I don't know where they
Covered
thought
fire.
they could get coverage for that. But apparently, they bought a plot of land with a home that had been burnt to the ground on it. And they asked if they could insure that land. To insure a land for liability, even on the commercial end, it cannot have a structure on it. If you're insuring it for
Even
just
if it's a burnt
liability.
down
Correct,
structure?
even if it's a burnt down structure.
Wow.
Right.
Seems like the inception point of insurance.
That's right.
Doesn't exist, but there's still something there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our kind of closing question we like to ask everybody, right, is a bit of, if you could give one piece of really solid advice to anybody who's either thinking about getting into real estate or is in real estate but is maybe struggling or trying to sort of figure out how to make better decisions and choices to further their career, what advice would you give to that agent? And also for insurance, same thing.
So two-parter. So for the person that is looking to get into it, come into the office and see what it's about. There are plenty of people who would be open to sitting down with you and kind of explaining what their day looks like. It's not as glamorous as you may think. There's a lot of just dialing the phone and checking emails and scrolling a computer. So it's there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Make sure that's the right fit for you, and also understand it's not going to be a quick turnaround. So those are some of the biggest things to know when you get into it, because folks think I'm going to get my license and start making millions of dollars, and it takes years to get to to even start seeing that needle move in that direction. Well, not for all, there are some exceptions, but
they're putting in the work.
they're putting in the work. And
I think that's actually been the underlying theme with almost everyone we have. It's not glamorous, and it works if you do the work.
And the second part of that is I've been teaching a few of our night classes now, and so of course folks start asking me like, what leads do you pay for and this and that, and it's like, don't chase the shiny object. Yeah, they can supplement, but it's I check my numbers every year, and usually 65% of my business comes from my sphere, the people I know, and past clients. So it's like you can. If you have the extra money to experiment with some things, great. They do work, but it's they work better when you have a high volume of money you can put into it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, that's helpful. What do you think, Andy?
Let's see. The average age of an insurance professional is about 45. So right there, that tells you there's not a lot of young folks coming into the business.
Why do you think that is? Because you were younger when you started, right?
I'm not sure why it is. I mean, a lot of people look at insurance negatively. That would be maybe the first answer off my head.
And do you think that's just because most people, I mean, knock on wood, good thing, right? Shouldn't be knocking the table. See insurance as something that's sort of like this necessary evil because they never actually have to take advantage of it. But I mean, the people who have it and then they need it, they're like, thank God I had it, right? But those are fewer than the general population.
Yes.
Well, I think it's almost the exact opposite of real estate. So many people come into real estate thinking it's this glamorous job that we're going to get to go show houses, and it's like it is on TV, and then they realize the reality of it. I almost feel like it's opposite, that, insurance, but that there's so much opportunity. The very fact that the average agent is 45, there's so much opportunity.
There is.
Because 45-year-olds aren't getting younger.
Correct. Just about every insurance company and every agent in the country is generally short-staffed 100% of the time.
Wow.
Like I said, there's not enough young people or people in general coming into the business.
That's great.
And just as a quick sort of understanding too, just as a relation point, as an insurance agent, do you go through sort of a similar path as a real estate agent? Like you're trying to find clients?
We have to be licensed, just like a real estate agent does. Our license, we have to take continuing education courses. Every 2 years, we have to take an exam to renew our license. So yes, it is.
Oh, you have to take an exam to renew. See, that's the problem. Us agents, I don't know if we could handle a test every 2 years.
I would definitely drop out the number of agents.
Maybe we need to do that.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Great. Well, thank you both for coming on the episode. and really appreciate it. You guys will come back someday?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
behind the sign.